What's up, guys? Fiasco here. We're jumping in, oh boy, to the very messy Battle of Malvern Hill. This is just a quick look at the army going into it. So first corps a little larger at 19 units, and second corps only got 15. I have spent so much reputation arming this army that my army will be at a bit of a morale hit. So -1 morale. It doesn't come into play a lot in the battle if you're, careful in terms of exposing your dudes. So in this fight, we're tasked with essentially fighting down this thin corridor to this red X. And you'll actually recognize this farm. We've fought over this art asset before, which is kind of funny. So they're intelligently kind of reusing things. The game's telling us that attacking the flanks is dangerous, and we need to go down the middle here. So they say don't go that way, and they say don't go this way because other reasons. But of course, hey, you're the general. You can do what you want. And what we do is... this is always kind of a hard battle for the Confederacy. It's actually kind of a messy fight for really both sides. The Union playthrough is a bit better because you're on the defensive. So the game's saying, hey, like, use your artillery and soften them up before you go in. From the Confederate perspective, you have a very narrow front upon which to attack, and it's very easy for the attack to kind of stumble or get kind of caught up in a quagmire, and for your troops to get jumbled up, and that's bad for your momentum. From the Union perspective, it's very easy for the AI to punch through in one location and then kind of, create a toehold from that. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we don't launch our primary attack on the flanks. A way to approach this fight is to use the flanks to support the main thrust. The game's correct in that the terrain in which you have a maneuver, these copse of trees are going to be kind of our little forts that we operate from. So the game's correct in that main piece of terrain in the middle there is really the only maneuvering ground you've got. So I'm going to put the howitzers on both the units of howitzers on the. Again, we're coming from the north, so it's going to be all backwards. We're going to put them on the right flank. I'm going to orient north-south and just call it a day. Both of the long-range howitzers are going to be on the right flank with the intention of firing onto the Union position from the flank, and our direct fire weapons, which is to say 3rd Field and 8th Artillery, are going to be deploying in the center. So 8th Artillery is 3-inch rifles, and 3rd Field is 6-pounders. 8th Artillery is going to hang out. 6-pounders are going to go in that copse of trees along with the main thrust, and 8th Artillery is going to hang out at what I call medium range. And basically what's going to happen, we're going to try and bait the Union into attacking. So these copses of trees right here, we're going to try and occupy those and fire upon the Union defenses from those positions. It's not pretty. There's not a really great way to get out of this fight without kind of going and accepting some losses, which is not ideal, but, hey, c'est la vie. The best that you can do is mitigate those losses as best you can and do worse to the enemy. And we do. It's bloodier than I'd like, this fight. But we do manage to hit the Union a lot harder than they hit us. So first things first is we send the recon out to lead the way for the howitzers. And we push up the infantry, preparing to sort of support the attack. I'm going to let everybody kind of get in position before I push forward and really commit to the attack. So, the worst thing I could do is sort of just come in piecemeal and just sort of attack with whatever I've got on hand. That's not the right way to do this. First Corps could probably fight this battle by itself, and it would be a Pyrrhic victory, but I would be fine. I would win. And then we're going to send 7th Infantry and the 2 Cav units, 4th and 1st, on the extreme left edge of the map. And they're going to ford a river, and they're not going to do anything really for the first portion. They're important later on, where my objective is a flag at the extreme Union rear, and they're going to cross and claim that, and just kind of, you'll get there in a second. It's why I absolutely adore Carbine Cav. They are some of the best. Just fire brigade, emergency deployment. They're kind of like paratroopers, in that they're light and they can't hold by themselves for a long time, but they can secure terrain while your heavy infantry comes in behind you to hold it, or to, I guess, kind of fortify it. So I'm going to get everybody kind of on the left hook. We're going to get them situated, let everybody rest up for a bit. In the middle left there, you've got 3rd field gun, which is 6-pounders and a whole bunch of infantry. And they're going to occupy this copse of trees immediately north of the farm, and that fence line. And I'm going to stick 8th Infantry, which has Lorenz's, in the trees, and then kind of everybody else sort of fanning out from there. And we're going to utilize the fact that entrenchments are basically death trap, because there's one unit that can be fired upon by 8 units, or several units, whatever. I think it's 4 in this particular instance, just because of the way it all lines out. We're going to sort of utilize that, and the fact that the AI will continue to try and reoccupy those fences. And essentially the first part of this battle is just bleeding the enemy, securing some defensible terrain. It's not perfect, but it's workable. Securing some workable terrain and then bleeding the enemy, so that when you do eventually push into what is a very messy open field battle, hopefully the Union has either been shattered from a morale perspective or reduced from a numerical perspective, to the point that the Confederate army can stand in an open field and fight. 3rd Infantry joins the howitzers and the skirmishers in order to maybe apply some across the river fire on infantry. They're going to support this push on the Union right, where that eyeball is right now, the recon eye. They're going to support that. And then I misuse them, and they don't really play much role in the rest of the fight. So yeah, we continue pushing down with 1st Cavalry, 4th Cavalry, and 7th Infantry. Well, 6th, 4th, 8th, and 10th Infantry move up into position. They don't immediately strike. I get them in a position where they can just kind of hang out. And then the focus is on where Abercrombie and the supply unit is, and that recon eyeball. The focus is claiming that and using it as a fortress to attack the Union, and then that wheat field or cornfield or whatever it is to that position's left. And fighting from cornfields is, again, workable but not ideal. It provides concealment but not cover. So the game treats cover and concealment largely as the same thing and just different percentages as far as I can tell. I don't know for sure. But I've noticed that you, like especially skirmishers fighting from cornfields, are in a great position. But even so, infantry still takes less damage in a cornfield than it would out in the open. So now we're going to move the howitzers into position, and they're the key to the first phase of this battle, in that howitzers do a lot of morale damage. And I still don't understand the math that goes into this, but infantry occupying trenches seems to, from my perspective, and please comment and tell me I'm wrong, they seem to take increased morale damage when they're in entrenchments. I've seen, an understrength carbine cav unit completely shatter nearly full strength unit because they just happened to shoot all at once. And they take like Like they're shattering an infantry brigade that takes, I don't know, 20 casualties, and they just shatter because, like, oh God, we really like those guys. Like John and Steve, those guys were awesome. So I have no idea. So 8th Artillery, this is the 10-pound ordnance. Those guys have a great battle. 8th Artillery has a great battle. The 10-pound ordnance is probably the best general purpose gun in the game. And despite being a brand new unit and a brand new everything, they have a fantastic battle. And I hope that after this fight's over, I capture some more 10-pounders, because I'd love to beef that unit up to 12 guns and think about opening a second, because the more of these battles I fight, the more the Confederacy will struggle to... Now, this is me being stupid. With the sharpshooters, I'm like, oh, I have long range. I can shoot across the river and take out that cannon. Yeah, but the thing is, to do that, I need to be out in the open. And as you can see, I'm taking twice what I'm giving in terms of casualties. It's a very bad trade. And thankfully, I realized that and pulled them out. Proper utilization of skirmishers is difficult for me, because I'm not great at micro, especially when I'm playing at full speed like I am for most of these videos. When I'm playing by myself, yeah, here we go. So take a look at that. Second howitzer is the lighter of the two howitzer unit. They're not even that good. They don't have a particularly lot of expertise, but Abercrombie's unit just broke from a light volley that did, what, I think 20 casualties. It's nuts. And so I paused the game really quick, and I realized, like, this is my opportunity. This is an opening that's earlier than I expected. And I throw 11th and 9th infantry forward. And that's predominantly because both of those units have Springfield 42s, which is, in my opinion, a cheap and replaceable gun. It's also because they're large units, and it's also because those are smoothbore weapons that, again, are easy replaceable, that kind of thing. But also, this particular portion of the firefight's going to be at close range, and so why not utilize weapons that work best at the close and medium range before committing my rifled units to the battle. So I'm just confirming to myself really quick that those are both Springfield units. I had neglected to rename some of my infantry units that got weapon upgrades, and so the naming here is somewhat inaccurate, which is a shame, because usually I use that as a quick reference to say, like, hey, I need a smoothbore unit, and I can just at a glance know, oh, this is a medium skill smoothbore unit, and I'll grab them, and it's not just the stars, it's the efficiency rating in the weapon that I'm using. But 11th and 9th move quickly to occupy. You'll notice I've slowed the time scale down because this portion of the maneuver is fairly delicate. So that single arrow on the bottom right of the screen indicates the game's at, I think, 3/4 speed or half speed. And it's still plenty fast, but it gives you time to react while also allowing the game to move. And some of these bigger battles, it's, to me anyway, it's really easy to lose track of little things and to basically look at one part of the battle and then lose sight on something else, and then all of a sudden, your troops have maneuvered themselves into a terrible, like this. 11th Infantry is like obsessed with trying to shoot Bernie when I've got Bernie covered. 3rd Infantry's got Bernie covered. 9th Infantry has Bernie covered. I need 11th to be shooting at McCarthy, which is a battery of artillery south of the fence line by Palmer. Because the maxim for a lot of this stuff is, hey, you need to get the artillery out of the equation ASAP. We're in, if not canister, certainly K-shot range. And so they maneuver attempting to get a good angle on McCarthy, exposing themselves too much in the process. So half of that brigade is outside of cover. They're in the open. I need them to back up and get back in the woods, even if it does mean that I can't shoot McCarthy. I'll attempt to detach skirmishers and get at McCarthy that way. And even if all I do is I push McCarthy's morale to 40% and they're not firing at full efficiency, that's, in my opinion, good enough. So we need the howitzers doing morale damage here. First howitzer usually racks up thousands of kills or some stupid number of kills. In this particular battle, they don't do so much. I'm using them in primarily a support role, and once the front line moves beyond this point, I don't reposition them, and I should. I should have pushed them back to the center and had them support in the main line, and they don't. The fight here is across such a narrow front, it's hard to kind of keep on top of that. So the fighting in that copse of woods is particularly bloody. I moved Johnston over to provide support, but at this point in time, my position is largely been claimed. I have 8th Artillery now moving up to support as well, 2nd Infantry who has Lorenz's or Enfields, some rifled weapon of some kind, and I have them in that cornfield. This is intended to take some of the pressure off 11th and 9th. I probably shouldn't have such a high value unit right there. The AI can't resist, and it does seem to direct a lot of fire towards 2nd Infantry, which is a shame. So 9th Infantry now has a major hard-on for the idea of trying to get into this firefight, when to do so would expose my flank, and I'm trying to force them to cover the flank, and they're just like, no, we want to get in there. Okay, so you got to watch out for that kind of thing. It's unfortunate that I have to have them on hold. There's some of these little idiosyncrasies when you're playing. You'll notice that the AI, even yours, makes some of these behavioral changes that don't make a great deal of sense, like Knight's obsession with trying to get into the firefight. There's no way to do it. You take a look at even these skirmishers. The second they walk out of those woods, they start getting gunned down. And right now, the unfortunate reality is that you just need to sort of grin and bear it and stick in those forests, or stick in that forest. But Palmer's already starting to get ground down. Chapman's starting to get ground down. This battle is unfortunately not one that carries a great deal of finesse. This is simply a slugfest, and it's actually really fun. I know I talk about trying to minimize losses and strategy and what's efficient and all that kind of stuff, and it's you absolutely do want to keep those things in mind, but this is a war game. Every now and again, it is fun to just kind of have a knockdown drag out, a proper battle. So now we're going to get the second part of the initial offensive, what would be from the Confederate perspective a right hook, but from looking at the screen, a left hook. I bring the other half of the battle line in position and essentially utilize the same strategy. So I bring 3rd Field up. They're going to be in canister range. 10th, 8th, 4th, and 6th all move into position. And I have them aligned in such a way that 8th is going to be covered by woods and 6th is going to be on the far flank. And that is so that, ideally speaking, my 2 newer smoothbore rifle or smoothbore musket units take the brunt of the fire. I'm trying my best to sort of manage my risk. I want the units that I feel I can afford to take the hits, and the other ones to avoid the damage. And I should have been doing that on the right as well with 2nd Infantry. They've got Enfields. Those are expensive weapons to replace. Those are 2-star troops. I need from the player's perspective to mitigate those losses better, and I didn't. I'm watching that, now in post recording. But yeah, so here, take a look at Martindale is 1 brigade. It can shoot at any one target in front of it, and I think it's choosing to shoot at the artillery or perhaps 4th Infantry, I can't tell. And everybody else can shoot Martindale. And so 6th Infantry isn't getting shot at, 4th Infantry isn't getting shot at, 10th is too far back, and that's on me to reposition. I've got some supporting fire from 7th just to keep what looks like Butterfield distracted. Palmer's fallen off the fence line, and now I'm really laying into Chapman? Yeah, Chapman. I moved 5th up to take the pressure off of 2nd, who was initially been moved to take the pressure off of 11th. This is a messy, grindy fight. But this part of the battle is all about really laying into the attrition and utilizing the fact that the Union feels compelled to maintain what is an operationally disadvantageous position, i.e. that fence line, and just keep on trying to occupy it. And we're just going to be like, yeah, please, by all means, feel free to occupy. We're only too happy to issue some more casualties. So Second Corps comes into the battlefield, and from my perspective, like, where are they going to go? I've already got the front line fully occupied. I've got reserves. I've got flank forces. I don't know where to put Second Corps, and that's the challenge of this battle. Is it's a bloody mess. So you take a look at the mouse now. It's got kind of red cross in front of it, meaning I can't march across the river like I'd like to. Like, I can't ford that river, so we got to go around it. So 13th, 14th, and 15th are all going to go around. There's this very little narrow ford. You can go top right corner. They're my flank force. Everything else is going to go support the main thrust. And ultimately what I'm going to do is I have First Corps take and hold that objective and then bleed the Union, and then the offensive is taken over, so to speak. So Second Corps relieves First Corps, who has been being bled out in the battle so far. So the casualties are light on a corps-wide perspective, but they're very heavy in some units. They're uneven. There's casualty inequality in my force. So push up 1st and 4th Cavalry. They're still not where I'm going to want them. So I flirt with the idea of trying to cross the river here and raid in the Union rear. Look at all that artillery that's largely unprotected. But that's the exact same way that I lost 2nd Cav in the last battle, or 3rd Cav, whatever it was. And so we're not going to do that. Yeah, I think it was 3rd Cav. So I push up Kemper. I send 2nd Cav to be the spearhead of the flank force, and they end up being pretty hugely instrumental in the course of the fight. They really hold their own, and they're on my first 3-star unit, but they're a great indicator of what a 3-star unit can start doing. The kind of efficiency, the kill-death ratio that they put out. It shows you how an elite unit can really pull far above its weight class. So Griffin's occupying the fence line. I'm more than happy for Griffin to do so. Please, by all means, Griffin, occupy that fence line. This is still part of First Corps' portion of the battle where their objective is to essentially bleed the Union dry. Griffin's taking casualties, but he can only target one unit. I think anytime that the AI has attempted to occupy the fence line by 11th and 2nd near the flag, they've been just shot off immediately. So now Griffin, having taken 250-ish casualties, decides, oh, maybe this fence line isn't such a good idea after all. 8th Artillery is just doing a great job putting a lot of fire out. And this is the first phase kind of largely paying dividends now. So we're going to try and push up. The terrain here is good to do so. I want that recon eye, and I'd like to anchor with the farm. So now we're pushing the Second Corps units up. I'm just maintaining, keeping an eye on what's going on with the flank. They take a minute to get into position, but once they're there, they pay dividends for you in this battle. And if you're playing this battle, you can probably get away with less than 3 full infantry brigades. But look at the front. I didn't really need all the units I had. I didn't feel. So a unit, Martindale, has occupied the fence line, but the models hadn't actually gotten there. That's kind of interesting. And then they just get hammered. I don't know if we even ever technically entered melee, even though our flags crossed. So now I've got the recon eye, which limits. I've got every observation point on the map that I know about, and that limits the visibility of the Union Army. I don't know how much the computer AI has to follow visibility rules. I assume they do, but you know, that's a worthwhile objective, kicking them off the recon point. Some pretty brutal casualties here. However, you know, in terms of the positioning, it's mostly being suffered by smoothbore Springfield 42 units. Not exclusively. 6th Infantry took a pretty heavy hit, but it's mostly the smoothbore units. I would like to be pushing out of this copse of woods where Johnston is. However, I don't have enough artillery in place. I don't have enough infantry in place, and the Union artillery or cannon is still too strong to do so. So I'm kind of eyeballing, you know, what the next thrust is going to be. But you're seeing a lot of the same general principles of offensive operations that we've been talking about. So screening, recon, harry the flanks. We've talked about that. And despite this being so I think this is one of my most aggressive battles. But I say that, and you're still generally seeing the offensive maneuver occurs in short, sharp thrusts. I don't have these large, broad, sweeping maneuvers. For the most part, you know, I occupy a position, and then I shimmy forward a bit, occupy a new position, and make them come to me, and so forth and so on. Rinse, wash, repeat. We're grinding the Union Army down here, and you're seeing that top of the screen, that red and blue bar was at the beginning of this battle relatively even, and now it's not. So this is the battlefield finally fully opened up, and this is the actual objective, is these two flags at the bottom of the screen. So 2nd Cav really blows me away with their efficacy here in the course of this fight. So the infantry isn't in place yet. The Union's going to cross that river and probably deny me what could be key terrain. And so we throw 2nd Cav back into it. The Union continuing to attack the farm, and I'm more than willing to allow them to take casualties doing so. Chapman, for whatever reason, tries to cross the river, shot back. 2nd Corps finally coming online, and will be able to relieve 1st Corps. Before too long. But the Union's going to keep aggressively attacking because I control a flag, because I control, you know, what is one of their objectives. If I was the Union player, I would fall back to the trees where the other flags are at their great defensive positions. So 2nd Cav has halted the forward momentum of Sickles. 2nd Cav is loose order troops firing downhill from cover on close order troops in the open who appear to have no forward momentum. And the accuracy, I just can't state, you know, just how important that is, how efficient they are, and how well they perform. And 2nd Cav's going to have, 4th Cav is the new unit. 4th Cav is going to have a while before it gets to that level of efficiency. But, you know, when they get there, I think my dream is to have 2 or 3 carbine Cav units in every corps. So here we go, 10-1, basically. So 140-ish to 15 casualties. They're performing just exceptionally in holding back. that Union counter thrust or whatever. And so you take a look at third field. They've got 12 guns now, and they've taken 94 losses. This is why, despite 12 being the most efficient number for guns, I usually have my close range artillery units with 14 guns. You're going to take losses. And that's the point. So 8th Infantry has Lorenzes. I'm pulling them back. I don't want them to be in this constant melee back and forth. They still take horrendous casualties. And from my perspective, I'm always thinking about which guns are easy to replace, both in terms of money, but also in terms of availability. So the Confederacy does not have a great amount of access to certain weapons over as the campaign gets deeper and deeper. You rely more and more on battlefield salvage or using reputation to claim Enfields or not Springfields, but eventually we're going to get access to a weapon called the Richmond 61, which purports to have been a musket that was the equal of the Springfield 61, but manufactured in Richmond. So here comes the first part of our flank. We're going to go ahead and push 1st and 4th Cav across the river. I don't realize that there's actually a fording point there, but I mean, hey, so much even better. So the infantry's finally starting to get in position, and the amount of time this takes is partially why I don't advocate a significant thrust. I guess you could do more than 3 if you wanted, and open what amounts to a second front instead of having your 2nd Corps relieve your 1st Corps. And, God, if you had more troops, I suppose there's no reason you wouldn't do that. If you had a reserve corps for some reason, okay, yeah, sure, do exactly that. But now we can start kind of harassing the flank, and that's what I tend to use flankers for, is to harass and draw, harass the flanks and then draw troops away from the main effort. And so everything here is being done to support the primary thrust. So 2nd Cav still keeping that 10-to-1 kill ratio up. I think they do pretty much throughout the whole battle. They're a great unit. They're one of the ones that you get as a freebie at the end of, I want to say, I don't think it's Shiloh. I think it's something else, but they're one of the freebies you get. The Union gets as a freebie, I think, with the Black Hat Boys, but I forget the number. I think it's the Irish Brigade. They're a 3-star infantry unit, which is great. Okay. So 1st and 4th Cav have forded the river, and I get the impression that there are no Union forces nearby. And so I keep them mounted until I can get into the woods, and then I'm going to dismount them and move towards that flag and claim it. And then they're going to just kind of hold it. Very first day of Gettysburg, kind of, Cav sort of holding the important objective. And this is why, again, I keep talking about them being kind of like paratroopers. Is, imagine this is the 101st. They dropped in and they hold. Well, right now it's an objective, but they hold all the crossroads that would prevent the panzers from getting to that. I don't think this is the way it ended up breaking. They ended up actually happening because the panzers didn't deploy, but the intention was for them to hold the crossroads and prevent further reinforcements. It just didn't end up being necessary in the way that it was ultimately envisioned. But that's essentially what I'm using the Cav here to do, is take that flag, and then in my mind, ideally, the Union is like, oh crap, someone's taken the objective, and then just like they're suicidally charging towards the farmhouse flag, maybe I can bait them into doing the same further to the south. So 2nd Corps is finally online. I want them to sort of widen the front. I want to have more angles upon which I can attack the Union. I'm still trying to knock out Randolph's battery, or at least rout him. But we've continued the 10-to-1 kill ratio. Looks a little better, actually. Or no. Worse. More Bernie's brigade just being fed by himself into the entire Confederate army. There are some times that the AI makes these decisions that I can't understand what they were thinking. Attacking me piecemeal like this just plays into my attrition strategy. So, you know, there's, I don't know, 250 casualties just bam right there. I'm surprised the Union Army here isn't larger. I think they only ended up bringing, what, 20 or 30,000, and they have 60 some odd thousand to pull from. Okay, so look at 4th Cav. They have that little eyeball with the red cross through it. It means that for some reason the AI can't see 4th Cav, but they can see the other one. And I'd like to get those units to the point where the AI can't see either of them. And that makes them a kind of a nice surprise. All right, so we're continuing to try and extend the Confederate left flank on the screen by moving rightward, which is not at all confusing for the viewer, I'm sure. And we'll do that. Eventually, I forget when I do it, but I need to start having 2nd Corps advance and replace essentially 1st Corps, who has done a phenomenal job. I am so impressed and happy with the performance of 1st Corps in taking and holding that terrain in what is essentially an attrition play. And there's this sea of blue bodies right in the middle of that field there. Oh my word. This is a messy, messy fight. It is fun as all hell. And it's expensive, too. So we're going to detach skirmishers just to give us some visibility. And now that we've secured the flag on the left part of the map, we're going to try and do the same thing on the right. And so at this point, you know, we've got the Union engaged to the front, and now we're pushing 2nd Corps up, so they can't turn around and try and like ignore this front. They can't ignore that. They have to acknowledge it and continue fighting it. And we're going to keep advancing and keep demanding they pay attention to us. While at the same time, the supporting flank elements have or are going to capture the flags, which is ostensibly speaking what victory is measured off of. So the Union is going to kind of want to pay attention to both objectives, but they're not really going to be able to. Or all 3 objectives. They're not really going to be able to. They're going to have to pick their battles. And they don't have the forces to fight all 3 fronts effectively. They could absolutely kick me off of the bottom left one, 100%. I've got 2 dismounted cav units down there. They could absolutely kick me off that. And when I get that infantry in place, it's going to be hard to dislodge even just the 3 brigades that are there. It's going to be hard to dislodge that because they're going to be doing so from a, covered position against troops who would be attacking from the open and supported by dismounted cavalry. Continue the attrition strategy of sandpaper. So this is a term I'm borrowing from another game, but essentially instead of reaching deep and trying to get at their generals or their artillery or something beyond their front line, the sandpaper version of attrition essentially just cleans off whatever's in front of you. And then forces them to send up whatever the next line is and kills that too. And it's less effective in a game like this where the frontline units have such durability, but you're seeing it pay off now as these brigades are too small The brigades in the field are all too small to really meaningfully challenge the 2,000, 1,700 man brigades that are coming to fight them. There's 800 men. Grover is large at still 1,900, but he's fresh. It looks like he's a no-star, one-star unit. Okay. But most of their units are hanging out in the just over 1,000 to 1,300 range. And there's a lot of small units that have been being beat up over the course of the battle. And most of the Confederate units, with a number of exceptions, are still 12, 13, 1,400 plus. A lot of them are fresh. A lot of them are 2,000. So this is sandpaper playing out. You wear down the battle line of your opponent such that that battle line is no longer effective and can no longer protect the gooey innards. So the battle line can no longer protect the artillery, the supply wagons, the generals, and that's how sandpaper works. Now there's the other version of attrition where you just cut off the head of the snake, kill the generals, kill the artillery, whatever, all that kind of stuff. Sandpaper works but is messy. In this kind of a fight where the front's so narrow, you have to use sandpaper. You kill the sharpshooter units because there's nothing else in front of you. The AI, or the Union here, does not have an effective front line. And the Confederates do. They could wipe this out and I'd have one behind them in a heartbeat. If I had reserve units, I could do the same. Griffin is now 666 people. I've wiped out a couple of artillery units. I'm wiping Weed will be shattered, but probably not completely wiped out. The sharpshooter unit's gone. Some of the other batteries are gone. The conclusion of this fight gets really, really messy. And I get more aggressive than I usually get in these fights. Continuing with 2nd, 18th, and 21st Infantry to extend and encircle the flank. Bringing the artillery forward. I should have done this earlier. It's so easy to lose, I guess, visibility on artillery. And artillery, to my perception, needs to basically be right on the ass of your infantry. Right on the butt. Just supporting them basically right behind the front line. So there's no front line right now. There's Hunt, Porter, 2 or 3 artillery units, Henselman, and a bunch of routing infantry units who just now have realized apparently that I have some dudes in those woods guarding a flag. Now they'll be able to kick me out of there. I don't think that I have enough troops by a long shot to hold that back, no matter how good those cav units are. But in so doing, they've exposed their rear, and I'm just cleaning up all this artillery. And that's partially why I'm so aggressive, because I want to capitalize on that gap while I can. So there's a unit gone. And once the artillery is taken out, the ability of their infantry is reduced. So there's more skirmishers rendered, gone. Again, cav unit just continues to blow me away, 2nd cav. So the kill ratio is down to about 7-1, give or take. They were fighting artillery in the open. Okay, still 7-1, nuts. So these units in the woods here, they're going to be able to hold for some time, but not without support. And that's partially why I'm getting so aggressive with my press. I'm going to continue to move the artillery up. Is the realization that I could, if I'm not aggressive in my support, I could lose 3 very valuable carbine cav units, or have them rendered so weakened by fire that repairing them is either expensive or a multi-battle prospect. And I don't want either one of those things to happen. So I'm pushing forward with infantry, which is expendable, to relieve the infantry or the carbine cav in this block of woods to the south here. But you know, in turning to face the cav, they exposed all their artillery, and I think all but one battery I've gotten now. And now the game says, hey, you can end the battle because it's basically over. But we're not going to do that. We're going to fight it out until I get all the units that are around. I suppose I could have kept fighting for a little while longer and gotten some more, but ultimately I decided not to. That's a thing to watch out for. So when a unit captures another unit, even if you've told it not to shoot, it decides to shoot. Okay. So I push 7th down here to essentially cover the retreat of these 3 supply wagons. I want those prisoners and I want that money. And so we're going to push 7th to guard that advance. And the Union Army here is I mean, totally outmaneuvered. And there's no fighting force here. There's no artillery. There is still a cavalry unit kind of running around in the rear, but it's just one and it's not supported. And they're gonna start losing officers here too. So here's where I start getting really aggressive. They don't have any supporting arms anymore. They have no artillery. Their officers are starting to go. The units are small. I'm moving in for the kill. And at this point, there is a willingness to accept some level of casualties and or battlefield chaos in order to inflict greater casualties. But attrition is an expensive strategy. And we, as you can see with the red and blue bar, we have inflicted far more than we've taken, but it's not like we've gotten off light. Some of these units have taken a real pounding. And then one of the generals gets wounded. I'm not that worried about it when an officer gets wounded or killed. That's partially why I've gone so gung-ho into the buying the officers from the academy thing. You continue expanding that core of officers or that pool, and sometimes the quality might take a hit because you just have to put a lieutenant colonel or something in a spot that should be really a full colonel or a general. But I mean, it's war. You're going to lose just officers sometimes, a lucky bullet, and that's it. So it's just kind of a cost of doing business in the game. I don't get that bent out of shape over it. It's unfortunate. Major Tyrone Lynch wounded. So, I mean, and I've been lucky thus far. I think most of the officers I've lost have been wounded. I think we've had 1 or 2 get killed. But, that's not bad. I mean, the wounded ones are just off the bench for a while, which is far better than, obviously removed from the game. So the reason that I am being so aggressive here with the army in the forest is I want to keep on pressing the attack and not giving the Union the chance to recover morale. I want to keep them shocked or shattered. I'm trying to get 2nd Infantry out of there. Again, yeah, so the officer for them has been KIA. They've taken damn near 1,000 losses. The Enfield is an expensive gun to replace, and those are 2-star troops. They've got no business in this fight. This is a fight for the Grenadiers. This is a fight for all those guys that have Springfield muskets and, you know, that kind of thing. Those are the units I want in this ugly part of the fight. Oof, those losses. Like, I know that these units are meant for melee, but goodness, it's still not fun to see. And I mean, like, I'm as if I'm sure from the Union's perspective, it's fun to look at the numbers go down. You think about what it costs to replace these in the game. th, 4th, and 19th charge in. The attack is supported by artillery and rifle-armed infantry who are going to be pouring supporting fire. I think some of these units shatter pretty much right away. Some of them stick it out. But the Union Army has kind of ceased to be an organized fighting force, and now it's just cleanup. And I know I talked in a previous video about, like, hey, prioritize the artillery, but part of the reason that I outflanked so aggressively was to force them to pick a side and fight in that direction. And then, you know, once a flank was exposed, immediately I seized upon it and then started just racking up the casualties. So Robinson's probably going to shatter here before too long. Yep, there he goes. I can't imagine, you know, Barry or any of these units are going to be long for the world. And now having exiled them from the woods, so to speak, I take my position at the edge of the forest and we start shooting downhill into them. I debate bringing 2nd Infantry back into the fight because this is now back to being a shooting match, but no, they've done enough. It's going to be expensive enough as it is to replace them. Look at this sort of weak fire. So there's no real organized resistance coming from the Union at this point. There's a collection of soldiers, you know, and they have weapons and they know how to use them still. But the officers or NCOs aren't coordinating fire back. So these two units, Abercrombie and Sickles, they kind of end up flitting off into the wilderness, and I don't want to go to the hassle of trying to find them, or maybe not Abercrombie, well, whoever. The two units end up surviving the battle. I don't know which ones they are. Now I'm getting greedy. I mean, at this point, I've pretty, like, undeniably won. And I'm like, no, I want to kill them all. So we push forward, start shooting at Carr, start shooting at Grover. The best part about this is because these are, muskets, right? Like some of these rounds spill over and hit Henselman or Hunt. And each of these general units have 60 men in them, so they don't have a great deal of ability to absorb casualties. Now we have the Cav in the mix, and I have not kept 2nd Infantry or 2nd Cavalry armed, ammoed, or supplied, whatever, and that's, unfortunate. Bad play on my part, definitely, but they're still useful. I don't know why the game does this. The crisscross seems so silly. So it's about 8 o'clock in the game world, about 1945. And I mean, you can see, right? You can see the game map. It's really dark. It's, I'd imagine, probably just very hellacious for the guys trying to fight this out and to see what they're shooting at. Here goes Hunt. Keep on closing that noose. All right. Oh, I think it's time to end this. Yeah, I mean, I'd shatter too. And close on poor Grover from pretty much every side. And he's already at the point of breaking anyway. He's not firing back in an effective manner. And now he's being charged from both sides. As is Porter. Porter just kind of gets caught up in the crossfire, so to speak. So they all shatter. And I could hunt down the 2 units that are left. I guess it is Sickles and Abercrombie. Can hunt them down. But from the perspective of the player, I honestly just don't. I don't want to. Yeah, so I confirm there's about 1,400 left. I see 700 and I see 700. So I figure that's pretty much everybody. I'm going to call it. So 8,000 for the Confederacy, really rough. 21, I'll call it 22,000 for the Union. That's a lot. A lot of good kill death. Generals wounded, a lot of promotions. That's excellent. One of our colonels is dead, unfortunately. And then I'm wounded. So, yeah, see, there's me, fiasco. So I got wounded, which is, it's going to be all right. So we captured a whole bunch of 12-pounders, captured some muskets and some supplies. We captured one 3-inch, and a bunch of our weapons we recovered. Okay, that's fine. So yeah, just under 8,500 to just over 2,250 or so. All right, well, that was the Battle of Malvern Hill. This is Fiasco. Thanks for sticking this one out. It is a fun but bloody fight. And this is Fiasco signing out.